The champagne cork hit the ceiling of our dining room at 7:43 p.m. on a Tuesday, and I had no idea I was celebrating the end of my marriage. "To Regional Director Blake Thompson," Jessica shouted, her smile so wide it looked like it might split her face. Our kids, Emma and Noah, cheered from their seats, banging their forks against the table like we'd taught them not to do 1,000 times. I didn't care. This was my moment. 15 years at Meridian Financial. 15 years of early mornings, late nights, missing soccer games and dance recitals, all building toward this. Regional director meant a 30% raise, stock options, and finally, the ability to give my family everything they deserved. "Speech! Speech!" Emma called out. She was 12, all braces and enthusiasm. I stood up, glass raised, looking at the three people who made every sacrifice worth it. "I couldn't have done this without you guys. Jess, you've been my rock through every crazy deadline and business trip. Emma, Noah, I know Dad's been absent sometimes, but that's going to change now. I promise." Jessica stood and kissed me, her lips tasting like the expensive champagne I'd splurged on. "I'm so proud of you, Blake. You've worked so hard for this." The irony would have killed me if I'd known. That night, after the kids went to bed, Jessica and I made love for the first time in probably 6 weeks. Work had been crushing me, the final push for this promotion consuming every ounce of energy I had. But that night, I felt alive again. Connected. Like we were finally getting back to us. "Things are going to be different now," I whispered into her hair afterward. "I'll have more control over my schedule. We can take that trip to Hawaii you've been wanting." "That sounds perfect," she murmured against my chest. 3 days later, I was in my new office on the 14th floor, windows overlooking downtown Portland, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Is your wife Jessica Thompson?" I stared at the message, ice forming in my stomach. Scam, I thought. Some phishing attempt. I deleted it. 2 hours later, another message from a different number. "You deserve to know the truth about Jessica. Check her phone." My hands started shaking. I called the number. Disconnected. I blocked it and tried to focus on the quarterly reports spread across my desk, but the words blurred together. At lunch, I called Jessica. "Hey, honey, how's your day?" "Good. Just finished my Pilates class. About to grab coffee with Amy." Her voice sounded normal, happy even. "That's great. Love you." "Love you too." I hung up and sat there, feeling ridiculous. We'd been married 14 years, together for 16. High school sweethearts who'd made it work through college, my MBA, her part-time job at the boutique downtown, 2 kids, a mortgage. We were solid. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Jessica was snoring softly beside me, her phone charging on her nightstand. The messages had gotten under my skin like splinters. At 2:17 a.m., I did something I'd never done before. I took her phone into the bathroom. Her passcode was Emma's birthday. It had been for years. The phone unlocked immediately, and I felt like the worst kind of husband, invading her privacy based on anonymous texts from some stranger. I almost put it back. Then I saw the app folder labeled Recipes. Jessica hated cooking. I'd been making dinner 4 nights a week for the past decade. My finger hovered over it. Inside weren't recipe apps. There was something called Signal, an encrypted messaging app I recognized from our IT department's security warnings, and another app with an icon that looked like a calculator, but when I opened it, it asked for a separate passcode. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it echoing off the bathroom tiles. I went into Signal first. The most recent conversation was with D. No profile picture. The last message was from yesterday, 3:47 p.m., right around when she said she was getting coffee with Amy. "Can't wait to see you Thursday. I've been thinking about last weekend all week." I scrolled up. My vision started to tunnel. "You're incredible. Best I've ever had." When are you telling him? I hate that I can't wake up next to you every morning. Pictures. Not explicit, but enough. Jessica in lingerie I'd never seen. Jessica in what looked like a hotel room. Jessica's smile, that same smile she'd given me when toasting my promotion, directed at someone else. I scrolled back further. Months. The messages went back 8 months. 8 months of I love yous to someone who wasn't me. 8 months of hotel rooms and afternoon errands. 8 months of lies while I worked myself half to death to provide for our family. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. I took screenshots, texting them to myself, then deleting the texts from her sent folder. Some automated part of my brain was already in survival mode, gathering evidence. The calculator app. I tried Emma's birthday again. It worked. More photos. More messages. These ones backed up. But there was also a folder labeled Future. I opened it. Apartment listings, divorce attorney websites, a document titled Asset List that cataloged everything we owned, with notations about Oregon's equitable distribution laws. She was planning to leave me. She'd been planning it for months. And then I found the email draft, never sent, dated 2 weeks ago. David, I think I'm ready. Blake just got his promotion, which means the settlement will be calculated on his new salary. My lawyer says timing is everything. I'll tell him next month, after his first paycheck at the new rate clears. Then we can finally be together. I sat on the bathroom floor, phone clutched in my hand, and everything I thought I knew about my life disintegrated. She wasn't just cheating on me. She'd been waiting for me to succeed so she could take half of everything I'd worked for. The promotion I'd sacrificed everything for, the missed bedtimes, the cold dinners, the weekends at the office, had been the finish line she was waiting for. I was a retirement plan, a meal ticket she was cashing out. The solar panel app had been Jessica's idea, naturally. We should be responsible, she'd said last spring, standing in our North Las Vegas backyard with that earnest expression she'd perfected. Energy independence, Blake. Think about the kids' future. I'd written the check for $43,000 without hesitation. Regional director money hadn't kicked in yet, but I had savings. Always had savings for Jessica's ideas. The app itself was elegant. Real-time monitoring, credit tracking, usage patterns displayed in clean graphs. I'd check it occasionally, watching the green bars climb as Nevada's sun hammered our roof. Jessica checked it constantly, or so I thought. Just making sure we're optimized, she'd say, phone angled away from me. I understood optimization differently now. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when I noticed the pattern. Couldn't sleep, hadn't slept properly in the 6 days since I'd found those messages, so I was scrolling through everything Jessica touched. Bank statements, credit cards, grocery receipts, the solar app. March 15th. Generation dropped 23% overnight. Jessica's calendar that day. Early night, exhausted. March 22nd, another 19% dip. Her text to me at 8:30 p.m. Headache, going to bed. April 3rd, 27% drop. Her note on the kitchen counter, don't wake me, need rest. I pulled up the detailed monitoring screen, the one that showed hour-by-hour generation and consumption. Our system should produce nothing at night. Panels don't work in darkness. But consumption should be minimal. Refrigerator, a few lights, maybe the TV if I was up late. These nights showed spikes. Significant draws at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., sometimes past midnight. I cross-referenced our neighbor's information. Gerald Paulson, retired aerospace engineer, lived in the mirror image house to our right. We'd split the cost of the community pool 3 years ago. His idea, our money mostly, but he maintained it. Shared access, shared expenses, shared meter for the pool equipment. The pool had its own monitoring system. Gerald had insisted, wanted to track chemical pumps and heating costs. I'd never looked at those logs before. Didn't need Gerald's password. He'd written it on the laminated instruction sheet zip-tied to the equipment box. Pool Master 2021. Aerospace engineer, terrible security habits. The correlation was perfect. Every night Jessica claimed exhaustion. The pool system showed activity. Heater running. Jets activated. Lights on. Sometimes for 3 hours straight. April 3rd, her need rest night, showed pool access from 8:47 p.m. to 11:23 p.m. Water temperature raised to 87 degrees. Jets on full. I pulled her phone records next, the ones I'd been documenting. Deleted call logs I'd recovered from the cloud backup she didn't know synced to my laptop. 8:52 p.m., April 3rd. Outgoing call to David's number. Duration, 4 minutes. 9:17 p.m. Incoming call from David's number. Duration, 47 minutes. 10:31 p.m. Outgoing call. Duration, 18 minutes. She'd been in the pool with him. On my power bill. Using the system I'd paid for, the water I maintained, the heater that pulled from our solar credits. I spent 3 hours building the documentation. Screenshots of the solar app showing generation dips. Pool logs with timestamps. Phone records overlaid on the same timeline. Credit card statements showing charges at the boutique on days she claimed to be working late. The boutique that closed at 6 p.m. according to their website. 16 instances total. 16 nights she'd claimed exhaustion, headaches, early bedtimes. 16 nights she'd been in that pool. Naked probably, with David, burning through energy credits I'd earned. The irony tasted like copper. I'd installed solar panels for the kid's future, while she planned to take half of everything and leave. I printed the graphs in color. Full page, high resolution. Taped them to the sliding glass door that led to our backyard and the pool beyond. Then I waited. Jessica came home at 3:47 p.m. on Wednesday. I heard her car in the driveway, the garage door opener, her heels on the tile. She called out something cheerful I didn't process. I was sitting on the couch facing the backyard, laptop open, more documentation spread across the coffee table. Blake? She appeared in the doorway, yoga mat under one arm. You're home early. Took a personal day. Her eyes went to the laptop, the papers, then to the sliding door. I watched her face as she registered the graphs taped to the glass. What's that? Solar monitoring data. Interesting patterns? She set down the yoga mat carefully. Too carefully. Patterns? Come look. I didn't move. Made her walk across the room, past me to the glass door. Made her stand there reading the printed graphs with their highlighted sections and handwritten timestamps. I don't understand, she said. Her voice had that uncertain quality, the one she used when she was calculating her next move. March 15th. You went to bed early with a headache, remember? Silence. Our solar generation dropped 23% that night. Pool system shows heater and jets running from 9 p.m. to midnight. Your phone records show 3 calls to David's number during those exact hours. She turned. Her face had gone white. You're tracking my phone? I'm tracking my power consumption. The phone records are just supporting documentation. This is insane, Blake. You're obsessing. April 3rd. You left me a note. Don't wake me. Need rest. Pool heated to 87 degrees. Jets on full. 47-minute call to David at 9:17 p.m. Want me to continue? The pool is shared access. Gerald uses it too. Gerald's in Phoenix visiting his daughter. Has been for 3 weeks. I called him this morning. Very helpful conversation. He's concerned about the unusual activity on his pool logs, actually. Wondered if we'd been having parties. Jessica's hand went to the door frame. Supporting herself or preparing to run, I couldn't tell. 16 nights, I said. 16 times you lied about being exhausted or sick or needing rest. 16 times you were in that pool with him, using energy I paid for, water I maintain, equipment I installed. Did you bring wine? I bet you brought wine. Candles, maybe. Very romantic, Jessica. Very optimized. You're crazy. But her voice shook. The utility co-op has very specific rules about shared meters and unauthorized usage. I've been reading them. Fascinating stuff. When you have a split system like ours, residential solar feeding into a shared recreational meter, there are regulations, audits, rate adjustments for fraudulent draws. Fraudulent? She laughed, but it came out wrong. It's our pool. Shared access, not shared with David. I stood up, walked to the door beside her, pointed at the graphs. Every spike correlates to your alibi nights. Every dip in our generation matches pool consumption. Your card, the one you thought I didn't know about, the one registered to your mother's address, paid for pool supplies on 12 of these dates. Gerald never authorized that. I never authorized that. This is harassment. This is documentation. I pulled another sheet from my pocket, unfolded it. I filed a dispute with the co-op this morning. Unauthorized draw on the shared meter. Requested a full-rate audit going back 6 months. They'll want to know who authorized the usage. They'll want to see access logs. They'll want to interview Gerald. Jessica grabbed for the paper. I held it away. They'll also want to know about the credit card charges. Utilities fraud is serious in Nevada, Jessica, especially when it involves falsified access to shared resources. The co-op takes it very personally when people game the solar credit system. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to isolate our systems. Can't have unauthorized draws affecting my energy independence. I smiled. Felt it pull wrong on my face. I'm also filing for property partition, citing utility drain and fraudulent use of marital assets. My attorney says it's a strong case, very strong, especially with this documentation. She stared at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in months. Saw something that made her step back. You can't do this. Already done. The co-op's sending an auditor next week. They'll calculate the unauthorized usage, apply the penalty rates, and bill accordingly. Your card, Jessica, the one on file for the pool supplies. They'll send the arrears notice there. Blake, I'm having the solar system remetered, separate from the pool entirely. Gerald agrees it's best. He's very upset about the unauthorized access, by the way. Mentioned something about trespassing charges if it continues. Jessica's face had gone from white to red. This is about control. You're trying to control me. I'm trying to stop paying for your affair. My voice came out flat. Dead. 16 nights, Jessica. $43,000 in panels. 3 years of maintenance. All so you could have a heated romantic getaway 30 feet from our bedroom. She moved fast, grabbed the lounge chair on the patio, the one she'd sunbathed on countless afternoons, and threw it. The aluminum frame hit the glass door with a crack that spider-webbed across my carefully taped graphs. You want documentation? She screamed. You want audits and isolation and property partition? Fine, Blake, fine. But don't pretend this is about solar panels or pool access or energy credits. This is you punishing me for wanting something more than your spreadsheets and your savings accounts and your pathetic... The chair had upended, landing half on the patio, half on the grass. The graphs were torn, hanging crooked against cracked glass. I looked at the damage. Looked at her. The auditor will want to see this too, I said. Destruction of evidence. They take that seriously. I pulled out my phone, took 3 photos of the broken door, the torn graphs, her standing there with her hands still raised. You're sick, she whispered. I'm thorough. I walked past her, grabbed my laptop and papers. I'll be at a hotel. The co-op will contact you about the audit. My attorney will contact you about the partition. Gerald will contact you about the trespassing complaint. Blake? Oh, and Jessica. I stopped at the doorway. You might want to check your solar app. I isolated our system this morning. The pool's on Gerald's meter now. Exclusively. Your access code's been revoked. Her face did something complicated. Rage and fear and calculation all at once. "Good luck explaining the arrears," I said. "I hear the penalty rates are brutal." I left her standing there, surrounded by broken glass and torn graphs, the pool glittering behind her like evidence. The hotel room smelled like industrial cleaning solution and old carpet. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching my phone screen light up with Jessica's increasingly frantic texts, each one more desperate than the last. "Blake, please come home. We need to talk about this. You're being ridiculous. I'll call the police if you don't answer." I blocked her number at 11:47 p.m. and opened my laptop. The utility co-op's customer portal showed my complaint had been escalated to their fraud investigation department. Case number UV 2024-1847. I screenshotted it, added it to the growing folder on my desktop labeled Documentation, and started drafting an email to my attorney. Not the family attorney. Jessica knew him. Had probably already called him. I'd found Brennan Walsh through a colleague's divorce 2 years ago. The guy had eviscerated his ex-wife's claims so thoroughly, she'd walked away with less than her attorney's fees. His website promised aggressive representation for high-asset divorces and had a consultation form that took my information at 12:03 a.m. His auto-reply said he'd respond within 24 hours. I couldn't sleep. Kept seeing Jessica's face when she'd hurled that lounge chair, the way her expression had shifted from shock to rage to something calculating. She'd realized what I'd done, the paper trail I'd built, the systems I'd isolated. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Blake Thompson?" "Speaking. This is Officer Denise Garrett with North Las Vegas PD. Your wife called in a welfare check, says she hasn't heard from you in several hours and is concerned for your safety." I closed my eyes. Of course she had. "I'm fine, officer. I'm at the Desert Palms Inn on Lake Mead Boulevard, room 237. I left the house voluntarily after a domestic dispute and needed space." "Any physical altercation?" "She threw furniture. I have photos of the damage. I was not injured and did not retaliate." A pause. "Do you intend to return home tonight?" "No." "All right, Mr. Thompson. I'll let your wife know you're safe. If you need to file a report about the property damage, I'll consider it. Thank you, officer." I hung up and stared at the ceiling. Jessica was already playing the concerned wife card. Probably crying to the police about how worried she was, how unlike me this was, how she just wanted to make sure I was okay. My email pinged at 6:47 a.m. Brennan Walsh didn't believe in waiting 24 hours, apparently. "Mr. Thompson, your case interests me. Can you be in my office at 9 a.m.? I've cleared my morning. Bring all documentation. BW." I showered in the hotel's lukewarm water, put on yesterday's clothes, and stopped at a 7-Eleven for coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. The paralegal at Walsh's office looked like she'd seen worse than my wrinkled shirt and bloodshot eyes. "Mr. Thompson, go right in." Brennan Walsh was younger than I expected. Maybe 40, with the kind of lean build that came from nervous energy rather than gym time. His office overlooked the strip, floor-to-ceiling windows that probably cost more than my car. "Sit. Show me what you have." I opened my laptop and walked him through it. The solar app graphs, the pool access logs, the cross-referenced timestamps with Jessica's phone records. I'd pulled our account history at 3 a.m., another thing she probably didn't know I could access. The utility co-op complaint, the property partition filing. Walsh didn't interrupt, just watched the screen, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "You filed the partition request yourself?" "Yes." "Stupid." My jaw tightened. "Excuse me?" "You should have come to me first. A partition action in Nevada is complex, especially with community property considerations. You've potentially exposed yourself to claims of bad faith if you didn't follow proper procedure. He held up a hand before I could respond. But it's fixable. What's not fixable is if you've made any other moves without legal counsel. Have you? I revoked her access to the pool system. Changed the codes. That's shared property? Shared with the neighbor, Gerald Paulson. He owns the system. We have access rights through an easement agreement from 2019. Who signed the easement? Both of us. Walsh made another note. She can claim you're interfering with her property rights. We'll need to document that the access was being used fraudulently and that Paulson supports the revocation. Does he? I haven't asked him directly, but he confirmed the access log discrepancies. Get it in writing, today. Walsh flipped through his notes. The utility fraud angle is interesting. Nevada co-ops take unauthorized draws seriously, especially in solar credit systems. If they substantiate your complaint, it becomes a criminal matter, not just civil. That changes the divorce dynamic significantly. How? Moral character considerations in asset distribution. Nevada is a no-fault state, but fraud is fraud. If she's been systematically stealing energy credits, and that's what this is, theft of a commodity you paid for, it demonstrates a pattern of financial dishonesty. Judges don't like that when they're dividing property. He pulled up a form on his computer, started typing. I'm filing an emergency motion for temporary orders. Exclusive use of the marital residence for you. Freeze on all joint accounts. Restraining order, preventing her from accessing or altering any shared systems, including the solar array. Will also request she be held responsible for any utility fraud penalties pending the co-op investigation. Can you do all that? I can request it. Whether the judge grants it depends on your evidence, which is substantial, and how fast her attorney responds. Who does she use? I don't know yet. She'll find someone by end of day. They always do. Walsh hit print, and somewhere in the office a machine whirred to life. Retainer is $15,000. That gets you through initial filings and first month of representation. After that, we bill hourly at $450. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. The personal account Jessica didn't have access to. I'd opened it 3 years ago for bonuses and stock options, kept it separate. $47,000. I can transfer it now? Do it. While I processed the payment, Walsh's paralegal brought in a stack of papers. He signed them without reading, handed half to me. Temporary orders motion. We'll file this morning, serve her by end of day. You need to not contact her, not go to the house except to retrieve essential items with police escort, and not make any additional financial moves without clearing them through me first. Understood? Yes? Good. Now tell me about the affair. I walked him through that too. The signal messages, the timeline, the deliberate waiting for my promotion. Walsh's expression didn't change, but his pen moved faster across the legal pad. You have screenshots? Yes. Send them to my secure email. Not the affair itself. Nevada doesn't care about that for asset distribution, but the part about waiting for the promotion. That shows premeditation and financial calculation. We can argue she's been planning to defraud you of marital assets by artificially inflating their value before filing. Will that work? Depends on the judge, but it's a narrative, and narratives matter. He checked his watch. I have a conference call in 10 minutes. Go home with a police escort, get your essentials, and find somewhere to stay for the next week. Not a hotel, too expensive, and it looks like you're wasting marital assets. Friend or family? My brother's in Henderson. Perfect. Stay there. Document everything she does. Texts, calls, social media posts. Don't respond, just document. And get me that statement from Paulson about the pool access by tonight. I stood. My legs felt shaky. One more thing, Walsh said. The utility co-op investigation. Do you know the timeline on that? The portal said 10 to 15 business days for initial review. I'll have my investigator contact them, see if we can expedite. The faster that comes back, the stronger our position. He handed me a business card. That's my cell. You think of anything else, you call. Day or night. I bill for it either way, so don't hesitate. I left his office at 10:23 a.m. with a folder full of legal documents and a bank account $15,000 lighter. My phone had 17 missed calls from Jessica's number before I'd blocked it. 3 voicemails on the landline forwarded to my email. I didn't listen to them. Instead, I called the North Las Vegas Police non-emergency line and requested an escort to retrieve personal items from my residence. They said an officer could meet me there at 2 p.m. That gave me 3 hours to drive to Gerald Paulson's house and get that statement in writing. The police escort arrived at 4:15 p.m., a single patrol car with Officer Ramirez, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I'd packed 2 duffel bags with clothes, toiletries, my laptop, and the external hard drive containing every piece of documentation I'd compiled. The solar panel app data, the pool logs, the screenshots, all of it backed up in triplicate. "This a civil matter?" Ramirez asked, one hand resting on his belt. "Divorce proceedings. My attorney requested the escort." I showed him the email from Walsh on my phone. "Just need to get my essentials without incident." He nodded, following me up the walkway. The sliding door still gaped open where Jessica had shattered it with the lounge chair. Someone, probably her, had taped cardboard over the hole. Amateur work. The tape was already peeling in the Nevada heat. Jessica stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. She'd changed since this morning, now wearing the gray dress she'd bought for my promotion dinner. The irony wasn't lost on me. "You're really doing this," she said. "Not a question. Officer Ramirez is here to ensure this goes smoothly." I kept my voice neutral, professional. Walsh's instructions echoed in my head. Document everything. Say nothing substantive. Get in, get out. 15 years, Blake. You're throwing away 15 years over a... Ma'am? Ramirez stepped forward slightly. "Let's keep this civil." I moved past her toward the bedroom, pulling clothes from the closet. Suits for work, casual clothes, my running shoes. Jessica followed, hovering in the doorway. "The utility company called," she said. "They're opening an investigation. You actually reported me for fraud?" I folded a shirt, placed it in the duffel. Didn't look at her. "They want to audit our account going back 2 years. 2 years, Blake. Do you understand what you've done?" "I understand perfectly." I grabbed my toiletries from the bathroom. Electric razor, deodorant. The prescription bottles from my side of the medicine cabinet. "I understand you used community property, the solar system I paid for, to facilitate your affair. I understand you heated the pool 16 times for your secret meetings while telling me you were going to bed early. I understand every kilowatt hour you stole." "Stole?" Her voice pitched higher. "It's my house, too." "Was." I zipped the first duffel. "It was your house, too, past tense." Officer Ramirez shifted his weight in the hallway. I could feel his discomfort radiating through the walls. I moved to my desk, unplugging my laptop charger and external monitor. The solar panel app was still open on my desktop computer, the graph showing today's generation curve. We'd produced 47.3 kilowatt hours so far, enough to run the house with credits to spare, if Jessica hadn't been bleeding the system dry for months. "I talked to Gerald," Jessica said suddenly. My hands stilled on the monitor cable. "He said you've been harassing him, demanding statements, threatening to revoke pool access." "I didn't threaten anything. I informed him that your access was being revoked due to unauthorized use during the separation. That's within my rights as co-owner." "He won't give you a statement." Triumph crept into her voice. "He said it's none of his business who uses the pool or when. He's not getting involved in our divorce." I finished coiling the cable, placed it in the bag. Gerald's reluctance was expected. Walsh had warned me that neighbors typically didn't want to take sides. But I didn't need Gerald's statement. Not really. The pool access logs spoke for themselves. Digital timestamps didn't lie. That's his choice, I said. So you've got nothing. Jessica leaned against the doorframe. Your whole fraud case falls apart without a witness confirming I was there. The logs confirm you were there. Gerald's security system records every entry. You used your access code 16 times between 9:47 p.m. and 11:23 p.m. on dates that correspond exactly with your early bed nights. The same nights the solar app shows energy spikes consistent with pool heating. The same nights David's phone records show him in North Las Vegas. I looked at her directly for the first time. I don't need Gerald to confirm what the data already proves. Her face paled slightly. Walsh filed the property partition request this morning, I continued. The court will appoint an appraiser to value the solar system separately from the house. Every kilowatt hour of unauthorized draw will be calculated. Every dollar of stolen credits. You're insane. I'm thorough. I picked up both duffels. There's a difference. Officer Ramirez cleared his throat. We about done here? Almost. I walked past Jessica into the living room, pulling my phone from my pocket. I photographed the cardboard-covered sliding door from multiple angles. The shattered glass still visible around the edges. The bent frame where the lounge chair had impacted. What are you doing? Jessica demanded. Documenting property damage. Walsh needs photos for the temporary orders hearing. I took another shot, zooming in on the splintered wood. This'll support the request for you to cover repair costs. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. An accident. I lowered the phone. You accidentally picked up a lounge chair and accidentally threw it through a glass door? You provoked me. You came out there with your graphs and your accusations. Ma'am. Ramirez's voice carried warning now. I'm going to ask you to step back. Jessica's hands clenched into fists, but she moved away. I took a final photograph of the living room, then headed for the door. The late afternoon sun hit my face as I stepped outside. I loaded the duffels into my car, a rental, since Jessica still had my truck. Another item for the asset division list. You need anything else? Ramirez asked. No, thank you for your time. He nodded, walking back to his patrol car. I sat in the rental for a moment, engine running, watching the house in the rearview mirror. Jessica stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the interior lights. 15 years, 2 kids, a mortgage we'd celebrated paying down, solar panels we'd installed together last spring, Jessica excited about the energy credits, the environmental impact. The irony would have killed me if I hadn't already documented every watt of her betrayal. My phone buzzed. Walsh. Got the emergency hearing scheduled for Friday 9 a.m. Judge Brennan. Bring all documentation, printed and digital. Police report from today's escort. I typed back. Officer Ramirez. Badge 4721. No incident. Photographed property damage. Perfect. Also, utility co-op called My Office. They're fast-tracking the audit. Apparently, your complaint triggered an automated fraud investigation because the usage patterns match known theft profiles. I stared at the message. Theft profiles. The co-op had seen this before. People siphoning electricity, manipulating meters, stealing credits. Jessica had joined their ranks without realizing the systems were designed to catch exactly what she'd done. When will they complete the audit? I sent. 2 to 3 weeks. But preliminary findings might be available before the hearing. I'll request expedited disclosure. Thanks. I pulled away from the curb, watching the house shrink in the mirror. The solar panels gleamed on the roof, catching the last rays of sunlight. Generating power. Building credits. Feeding a system Jessica had exploited for 8 months while planning her exit strategy. The extended stay hotel was 15 minutes away, a clean corporate place with a kitchenette and decent Wi-Fi. I'd booked it for 2 weeks initially, though Walsh estimated the temporary orders might take longer depending on Jessica's response. I unplugged my laptop in the hotel room, pulling up the solar app one more time. Today's generation, 52.1 kilowatt hours total. Usage, 31.7 kilowatt hours. Net credit, 20.4 kilowatt hours added to our account. Our account. Soon to be my account, once the partition went through. I opened my email. 3 new messages. One from Walsh with the hearing details. One from my boss checking in. I'd taken emergency leave citing family crisis, which was accurate enough. And one from an unknown sender. You got what you needed from the pool logs. There's more if you want it. My pulse quickened. The same number that had sent the original anonymous texts about Jessica's affair. I typed carefully, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Someone who knows what it's like to be on the wrong end of a liar. Check your mailbox at the house tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. Don't be late. The message ended. No signature, no follow-up. I stared at the screen, my mind racing through possibilities. Who had access to information about Jessica? Who cared enough to feed me evidence but stayed anonymous? Who knew about the pool logs before I'd even discovered them? Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. I set an alarm for 5:15. The manila envelope was waiting in my mailbox at 5:47 a.m., exactly where the text said it would be. I'd been sitting in my car since 5:30, watching the pre-dawn darkness, my breath fogging the windows. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jessica's face when the pool gate wouldn't open. The way her expression had shifted from confusion to rage in the span of a heartbeat. The envelope was thick, heavy. I didn't open it in the parking lot. Some instinct told me I needed privacy for this, needed 4 walls and a locked door. I drove to the temporary apartment, a furnished 1-bedroom in the Pearl District that cost more per month than our mortgage but gave me the distance I needed, and spread the contents across the kitchen counter. Utility bills, dozens of them, but not ours. I picked up the first one, a Nevada energy statement addressed to Gerald Paulson. September. The charges were highlighted in yellow. Pool heater operation, 247 kilowatt. October, 289 kilowatt. November, 312 kilowatt. Someone had done the math in the margins. Small, precise handwriting calculating the energy draw against standard pool heating requirements for a 15x30 heated pool. The numbers didn't match. The consumption was nearly double what it should have been for a single household. The second document made my stomach drop. It was a printout from the North Las Vegas Utility Co-op's internal system, the kind of thing you couldn't get without access to their database. It showed energy credit transfers between accounts. My solar installation generated credits that were supposed to offset my usage. Excess credits could be sold back to the grid or transferred to approved accounts. Gerald Paulson's account was listed as approved. I'd never approved it. The authorization form was attached, dated 18 months ago. Jessica's signature, neat and confident across the bottom line. The same signature that was on our mortgage, our tax returns, our children's school forms. She'd been siphoning energy credits to Gerald's account for a year and a half. I sat down hard on the kitchen stool, my hands shaking. The solar panels had been my idea, my investment. $43,000 in installation costs, financed through a green energy loan that I paid monthly. The credits were supposed to reduce our utility bills, make the system pay for itself over time. Instead, Jessica had been giving them away. No, not giving them away. I flipped through more documents. Bank statements, Gerald Paulson's checking account, monthly deposits, always the same amount, $240. Always on the 5th of the month. Always from an account I didn't recognize. The next page identified it. Sunlight Holdings, LLC. A Nevada limited liability company registered to a P.O. box in Henderson. Articles of incorporation showed 2 members, Jessica Thompson and Gerald Paulson. They'd formed a company. Together. My phone was in my hand before I realized I'd picked it up. Brennan answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. Blake, what have you got? I couldn't speak for a moment. The scope of it was overwhelming. The layers of deception stacked so deep I couldn't see the bottom. Blake? She formed an LLC with the neighbor, I said. My voice sounded distant, hollow. She's been transferring energy credits from my solar system to his account, then they've been selling them back to the grid through their company. For 18 months. Silence on the other end. Then, how much? I grabbed my calculator app, fingers moving automatically. Credits generated, market rate, monthly deposits. Roughly $3,400, maybe more. Send me everything, photos, documents, all of it. I'm calling Judge Peterson's clerk at 8. Wait. I stared at the stack of papers, my mind racing. Where did this come from? Who has access to utility co-op internal systems? Does it matter? It matters if it's admissible. If this was obtained illegally, the utility fraud investigation you triggered gives them subpoena power, Brennan cut in. They're already auditing both accounts. This just confirms what they're finding. Send me everything, now. He hung up. I photographed every page, my hands steadier now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder, more focused. Jessica hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She'd turned our home, our investment, our future into a revenue stream for herself and her accomplice. Gerald Paulson, the retired widower who'd seemed so friendly when we moved in, who'd suggested the pool sharing arrangement, who'd been so helpful during the solar panel installation. The pool sharing arrangement. I pulled up the original agreement on my phone, the document we'd all signed 4 years ago. Standard shared amenity contract, splitting maintenance costs, and establishing access schedules. Nothing unusual, except Jessica had negotiated it. Jessica had suggested Gerald as a pool partner when the original neighbors moved out. Jessica had handled all the paperwork. The timeline clicked into place with sickening clarity. 4 years ago, pool sharing agreement established with Gerald. 18 months ago, solar panels installed, LLC formed, credit transfers begin. 8 months ago, affair with David starts. Or maybe the affair had been going longer, and 8 months ago was just when they'd started planning the divorce. When Jessica had begun positioning herself for maximum financial gain. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Check Gerald's property records. Quitclaim deed filed 11/2023. I pulled up the Clark County Assessor's website, searched Gerald Paulson's address. The property records loaded slowly, my internet connection struggling in the early morning. There. A quitclaim deed filed November 2023, transferring 25% ownership of Gerald's property to Sunlight Holdings LLC. Jessica owned a quarter of the neighbor's house. The house where they'd installed a second solar array last spring. The house that shared our pool system. The house whose utility account was receiving my energy credits. I called Brennan back. She owns part of his property. Gerald signed over 25% to their LLC. When? November, 2 months after the LLC formed. I heard typing on the other end, rapid and aggressive. That's asset concealment. She's been building a separate property portfolio using your solar investment as seed capital. Did you ever consent to forming this company? I didn't know it existed until 10 minutes ago. Community property state, Brennan said. Anything acquired during the marriage is joint property unless specifically excluded by agreement. She formed a company using marital assets without your knowledge or consent. That's fraud, Blake. Criminal fraud. Can we use this? Can we use it? I'm going to bury her with it. His voice had taken on that edge I'd learned to recognize, the one that meant he'd found an opening. Send me those property records, then call your solar installation company. I want documentation of every credit generated since installation, every transfer authorization, every system access log. The co-op investigation is civil. This is criminal. I'm calling the DA's office at 9. Wire fraud, theft by deception, possibly money laundering if they've been moving funds between accounts to hide the income. The apartment felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. What about David? The affair? Becomes secondary. This is better than adultery, Blake. This is prosecutable. After we hung up, I sat in the growing daylight, watching the sun rise over Portland's skyline. The city looked clean from up here, orderly. Nothing like the chaos spreading through my life. My phone buzzed again. Gerald leaves for Phoenix every Sunday at 4 p.m. Flight 2847. Back Tuesday nights. Check the pool logs for those dates. I pulled up the access log I'd already downloaded, scrolled to Sundays. Every single Sunday for the past 8 months showed Jessica's access card at the pool gate between 4:30 and 11 p.m. 7 hours, every Sunday. While Gerald was in Phoenix and I thought she was having her self-care evenings. The affair wasn't with David. It was with Gerald Paulson. David was probably fictional, a name she'd used in the messages to throw me off if I ever found them. The whole elaborate signal conversation, the plans to leave, the timeline around my promotion, all of it designed to make me think the threat was external. Someone I didn't know. Someone I couldn't confront. Not the retired widower next door who'd been systematically helping her steal from me for 18 months. I made it to the bathroom before I threw up. The call came at 9:47 a.m. Thursday morning, 2 hours before I was supposed to meet Brennan at his office. Mr. Thompson, this is Detective Lauren Vasquez with North Las Vegas Metro. I need you to come down to the station regarding your utility fraud complaint. I pulled over into a Walgreens parking lot. Has something happened? We executed a search warrant on Gerald Paulson's residence this morning. There are some complications we need to discuss in person. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Detective Vasquez met me in the lobby. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back tight, the kind of cop who'd heard every lie twice. She led me to an interview room that was somehow colder than the hallway. Mr. Thompson, when you filed your complaint, you stated you believed your wife and Mr. Paulson were diverting your solar credits for financial gain. That's correct. I have documentation. We found the documentation. She slid a manila folder across the table. We also found approximately $47,000 in cash hidden in Mr. Paulson's garage, along with ledgers detailing energy credit transactions going back 23 months. Not 18 months. 23. The number hit different than I expected. 23 months meant this started before Emma's 6th grade orientation. Before Noah lost his first tooth. Before I'd even interviewed for the position that became my promotion. There's more, Vasquez continued. The ledgers reference multiple properties, not just yours. Mr. Paulson has been running this scheme with at least 4 other neighbors in your development. Your solar array was just the most productive. I stared at the folder without opening it. 4 other people? We're still identifying them. But here's where it gets interesting for you specifically. She opened the folder herself, pointing to a photocopied page covered in Gerald's cramped handwriting. See this notation? JT, Special Arrangement, 40-60 Split, Property Consideration. JT Jessica Thompson. The other victims appear to be standard fraud. He was siphoning credits without their knowledge, selling them, keeping everything. But with you, your wife was a willing participant receiving 40% of proceeds. The property consideration matches the quitclaim deed your attorney discovered. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the table. So this was never about an affair. Vasquez's expression shifted slightly. Not quite sympathy. We found no evidence of a romantic relationship between your wife and Mr. Paulson. What we found was a business partnership, a very profitable one. Then who the hell is David? She pulled out another document, a printed email chain. We're still working on that, but based on what we recovered from Mr. Paulson's computer, David appears to be a real person, someone your wife has been communicating with, someone who lives in Phoenix. Phoenix, where Gerald supposedly went every Sunday. The pieces rearranged themselves in my head, the picture getting uglier. Jessica wasn't meeting Gerald at the pool. She was using Gerald's absence, his real trips to Phoenix, as cover to meet someone else. The solar fraud was separate, parallel. Two different betrayals running on independent tracks. How long have you known about David? I asked. Since about 6 this morning when we imaged Paulson's hard drive. He kept copies of some of your wife's emails, insurance probably, in case she tried to back out of their arrangement. Vasquez leaned back in her chair. Mr. Thompson, I need to ask you something directly. Did you send yourself those anonymous tips? What? No. Because we're trying to identify who had access to this information. The LLC documents, the quitclaim deed, the credit transfer records. Someone compiled a very thorough dossier and sent it to you. That same person may have tipped off the utility co-op about irregularities in your neighborhood's energy reporting. The room felt smaller. I don't know who sent them. I assumed it was someone at the co-op, or maybe another neighbor who figured out what was happening. Maybe. She didn't sound convinced. Mr. Paulson is claiming he was coerced into the scheme. Says your wife threatened to report him for harassment if he didn't cooperate, that she manipulated him into setting up the LLC. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Gerald Paulson is a 72-year-old retired engineer who designed guidance systems for missiles. You think my wife coerced him? I think Mr. Paulson is looking at multiple felony charges and trying to minimize his exposure. I also think your wife is significantly younger, and he wants us to believe he was thinking with something other than his brain. Vasquez closed the folder. But his story has holes, big ones. The ledgers show this was his idea initially. He approached her about 14 months after you installed your solar array. Offered her a cut if she'd look the other way and provide access to your monitoring app. 14 months of watching, studying our energy production, calculating how much he could steal before I noticed. What happens now? My voice sounded hollow. We're filing charges against both of them. Theft, fraud, conspiracy. The DA is still determining exact counts, but your wife is looking at felony charges. Mr. Paulson is looking at significantly more given the multiple victims. She paused. There's also the matter of the other neighbors. Once they find out what happened, you can expect civil suits. Against Paulson, probably against your wife as well. Will I get my credits back? The cash we recovered will be held as evidence, then distributed among victims based on the ledgers. You'll get a percentage, but Mr. Paulson spent a lot of it. Gambling, from what we can tell. Those Phoenix trips weren't entirely fictional. He was hitting the casinos, using your stolen money to fund it. I thought about Jessica's face when I'd taped that solar app graph to the sliding door. The way she'd tried to brazen it out, like I was crazy for suggesting anything was wrong. She'd known exactly what those dips meant, had known for 23 months. When will you arrest her? We're coordinating with your divorce attorney. Given the active family court case, we want to make sure the criminal charges don't create complications for your custody arrangement. Vasquez stood. But soon. Probably tomorrow morning. I drove to Brennan's office in a fog. The streets looked different. Sharper somehow, like I was seeing them through new glass. Every house I passed made me wonder what was happening inside it. What betrayals were running on parallel tracks, invisible until someone pulled the right thread. Brennan was waiting in his conference room with 3 other people I didn't recognize. A woman in her 50s with steel gray hair, a younger man in an expensive suit, and someone who looked barely old enough to drink holding a laptop. Blake, this is Patricia Kern from the State Bar Association. James Holloway from the DA's white-collar crime unit, and Tyler Brennan, my associate. Brennan caught himself on the name, shot me an apologetic look. We've been coordinating since the search warrant this morning. Patricia spoke first. Mr. Thompson, I want to be clear about what's happening here. Your wife's actions constitute serious criminal fraud, but they also create significant advantages for your divorce case. The property she acquired through the quitclaim deed was purchased with stolen funds that should have been marital assets. That makes it subject to clawback and division. In English? You get half of Gerald's house, the younger Brennan said. Or half its value anyway, plus damages. James Holloway opened his own folder. The criminal case is solid. We have documentation, we have the money, we have Paulson's ledgers showing your wife's active participation. She's going to be charged with conspiracy to commit theft, fraud, and unauthorized access to utility systems. Those are all felonies in Nevada. Will she go to prison? Depends on her attorney and whether she cooperates. First offense, no violence, 2 minor children. She'll probably get a plea deal. Restitution, probation, possibly some jail time, but not years. He leaned forward. But here's what matters for you. A felony conviction means she loses credibility in family court. Any custody dispute, any financial claim she makes, she's arguing from a position of proven dishonesty. Patricia picked up the thread. We're filing an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets pending resolution of the criminal case. That includes her boutique, any joint accounts, the house. Everything stays locked until we determine what was purchased with legitimate funds versus stolen money. The younger Brennan turned his laptop around. We also found something interesting in the LLC documents. Sunlight Holdings has been filing tax returns. Your wife claimed her share of the proceeds as consulting income. She's been paying taxes on stolen money. Which means the IRS has documentation of her fraud going back 2 years, Holloway added. Federal charges are possible, though we'll probably leave that alone if she cooperates with the state case. I looked at the faces around the table. These people had been working all morning, building a case that would destroy Jessica's life. Part of me felt sick about it. The larger part felt nothing at all. What about David? Brennan and Vasquez must have compared notes. We're working on identifying him. The Phoenix connection is our best lead. Once we have a name, we can determine if he's relevant to the criminal case or just the divorce. I want to know who he is. We'll find him, Patricia said. But Blake, you need to prepare yourself for tomorrow. When Jessica is arrested, this becomes public. Your neighbors will find out. Your kids will hear things at school. This gets ugly fast. I thought about Emma and Noah, about the conversation I'd have to have with them. Again. First the separation, now their mother facing criminal charges. How ugly, Brennan answered. Local news ugly. Solar panel fraud ring ugly. Your neighborhood is going to be crawling with reporters once the other victims are identified. The meeting lasted another 40 minutes. Details about asset freezes, custody modifications, criminal procedures. I signed documents I barely read, trusting Brennan to protect my interests while my brain kept circling back to one question. Who sent those anonymous messages? Someone had known everything. Had compiled evidence even the police hadn't found yet. Had timed the revelations perfectly to maximize damage to Jessica while protecting me. Someone was watching, helping, and I had no idea why. The foreclosure notice arrived on what would have been our 16th anniversary. I stood in the kitchen of my new condo, a modest 2-bedroom in Henderson, close enough to Emma and Noah's school that they could bike over, and read the county document twice. The house Jessica and I had bought together, the one with the solar panels still gleaming on the roof, was being seized to pay restitution to the other victims of Gerald's scheme. Jessica had pled guilty to 3 felonies in exchange for 18 months at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Center and 5 years probation. Gerald got 6 years, The cash they'd recovered covered maybe 40% of what had been stolen. The rest came from assets. The house. Jessica's boutique, which sold for pennies on the dollar. Gerald's property, which I technically owned a quarter of, but would never see a dime from after the legal fees and victim compensation. I got my kids. Full custody, with Jessica's visitation contingent on her completing her sentence and maintaining employment. The judge had been clear. Proven financial fraud demonstrated a pattern of deception incompatible with shared decision-making about children. Emma took it harder than Noah. She was 14 now, old enough to understand that her mother had chosen money over integrity. Old enough to be angry about it. Noah, at 11, just seemed confused about why mom couldn't come to his basketball games. I never found out who sent those anonymous messages. Detective Vasquez had investigated, following digital trails that led nowhere. Burner phones purchased with cash. Emails routed through servers in 3 countries. Whoever had compiled that evidence knew how to stay invisible. Brennan had a theory. Someone else Gerald was stealing from, he'd said over drinks after the sentencing. Someone who figured it out before you did and wanted revenge, but didn't want the exposure of going public themselves. Maybe. Or maybe it was someone at the utility co-op who'd spotted the pattern and decided to help. Or a neighbor who'd seen Jessica and Gerald together and put pieces together I'd missed. I'd stopped looking for answers after a while. Whoever they were, they'd given me the truth. That was enough. David turned out to be real. David Paulson, Gerald's nephew, living in Phoenix. The affair had been happening, just not the way I'd thought. Jessica had met him during one of Gerald's trips, started something that had nothing to do with the fraud. 2 separate betrayals, running parallel, neither one knowing about the other until the police connected the dots. David hadn't been charged with anything. He'd just been a guy sleeping with a married woman, unaware she was also stealing from her husband with his uncle's help. The solar panels were still generating credits. I'd bought them out of the marital estate for 30 cents on the dollar, had them transferred to the condo. They produced more energy than I needed, so I sold the excess back to the grid. Legitimate this time. Every credit accounted for. Some nights I'd check the monitoring app, watching the green bars climb as Nevada sun did what it always did. The system didn't care about fraud or divorce or prison sentences. It just converted light into power, elegant and indifferent. Emma asked me once, about 6 months after Jessica went away, if I'd ever trust anyone again. We were sitting on the condo's small balcony, watching the sunset paint the mountains orange and purple. She had her mother's eyes, but, thank God, not her mother's talent for deception. I don't know, I told her, but I learned something important. What? That trust isn't about believing people won't hurt you. It's about knowing you'll survive when they do. She'd thought about that for a while, then nodded. That's pretty dark, Dad. Yeah, but it's true. The foreclosure notice went into my filing cabinet with all the other documents from the case. Evidence of a life that had ended, a marriage that had been built on sand I'd mistaken for bedrock. I thought sometimes about the moment I discovered those messages, sitting on the bathroom floor at 2:17 a.m., my entire world rewriting itself. How I'd wanted to wake Jessica up, scream at her, demand explanations. How instead I'd started documenting, gathering evidence, building a case. That choice had saved me, not the evidence itself, but the discipline of treating my own life like a problem to be solved rather than a tragedy to drown in. Jessica wrote letters from prison. I didn't read them. My attorney did, checking for anything relevant to the custody arrangement or restitution payments. He said they were mostly apologies, attempts at explanation. How the fraud had started small, just looking the other way while Gerald skimmed a few credits. How it had grown. How she'd convinced herself it wasn't really stealing because we were married and what was mine was hers anyway. The logic of the guilty. I didn't hate her anymore. Hate required energy I needed for other things. for Emma's therapy appointments, for Noah's homework, for rebuilding a life from components I'd salvaged from the wreckage, but I didn't forgive her either. Forgiveness implied she'd asked for something I had the power to grant. She'd stolen that power when she'd turned our marriage into a revenue stream. The kids asked sometimes if I'd ever get married again. I told them maybe someday, when I met someone who understood that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect trust. It was about showing up, being honest, doing the work even when it was boring or hard or unglamorous. Someone who wouldn't need encrypted apps or secret LLCs or elaborate lies. Someone who understood that the opposite of love isn't hate, it's deception. I sold the last of the shared property in November, a storage unit full of things neither of us wanted but couldn't bear to throw away. Wedding photos, kids' artwork, the champagne cork from my promotion dinner, which I'd saved in a drawer like a talisman. The buyer was an estate sale company. They paid $200 for everything and didn't ask questions. I took Emma and Noah to Hawaii for Christmas, the trip Jessica and I had planned but never taken. We snorkeled in water so clear you could see 40 feet down, stayed in a modest hotel that wasn't on the beach but was clean and safe and ours. On the last night, Noah asked if I was happy. We were eating shave ice on a bench overlooking the ocean, the sun setting for the 1,000th time in human history, indifferent to our small dramas. I'm getting there, I told him. And I was. Not because Jessica was in prison or because I'd won the divorce or because justice had been served. Those things mattered, but they weren't the point. I was getting there because I'd learned that the worst thing someone can do to you isn't breaking your heart. It's making you doubt your own perception of reality. And I'd learned that coming back from that, rebuilding your ability to trust what you see, to act on what you know, to believe in your own judgment, was the hardest and most important work there was. The solar panels kept generating power. The kids kept growing. The world kept turning. And I kept showing up one day at a time, building something real from the ruins of something false. That was enough. That had to be enough. Because in the end, the only person who could destroy my life was me. And I decided sitting on that bathroom floor at 2:17 a.m. that I wasn't going to let anyone, not even the woman I'd loved for 16 years, take that choice away from me. The sun set over the Pacific, and my kids finished their shave ice, and we walked back to the hotel together. 3 people instead of 4. Smaller, maybe, but whole.